Okay, we are recording. This is the University of Mount Olive. And we are in a Master of Business Administration program, preparing to see 4 of our most talented MBA class members graduate. This is the final portion of their MBA curriculum. And to demonstrate their talent, this team is going to provide us with a strategic assessment of PepsiCo. And with that, I will introduce the team's coordinator, Mr. Seth Norris. Seth, it's all yours.
Thank you, Professor.
You might want to introduce your teammates.
Okay, absolutely. We have Cassandra Burke. We have Lisa Pierce. We have Ashley Winstead and myself, Seth Norris.
Okay. Would you like to start the video, the PowerPoints? Would you like to start the PowerPoint slides?
Yes, actually,
okay.
We might have to cut and redo. There we go. There, perfect. Okay. So now we see them on your screen there. All right. And Lisa, take it away with our introduction slide, please.
Okay.
Okay, PepsiCo, we are going to go have an overview of the executive summary and introduction, background, environmental assessment, capabilities analysis, PepsiCo's goals and objectives, the strategy, and the implementation.
Continue, Lisa.
Go ahead. Hang on.
Somebody say something.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Still Lisa. Yeah.
I'm stuck. I'm stuck. My computer is frozen. I'm sorry.
We're on the executive summary.
Well, I think in that case, until Lisa's computer opens up, someone else should just carry on.
Please jump in because mine is stuck.
Sure.
Why don't you log off, Lisa, and log back in?
So our summary over PepsiCo, we wanted to get out there that it's a global corporation and a leader in the beverage and snack food industry. So total retail sales were $66 billion in 2019, and we'll go into a lot more of those numbers as we do a financial analysis over them. The reciprocal reinforcement of critical skills, abilities, and implemented techniques is what's making its strategic management what it is since 1965. PepsiCo is a leader in its industry through successful mergers and acquisitions, exemplary leadership, localization to regional markets, and the ability to adapt to evolving tastes of customers over the years. PepsiCo is staying ahead of the customer's demand for healthier options in beverages and snacks, and we will definitely be showing you more of those new snacks. Are you still frozen, Lisa?
I'm good. I'm good. PepsiCo was introduced in 1965 when Mr. Donald Kendall and Frito-Lay's Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Herman Lay, merged their companies with the approval of the company's shareholders. Frito-Lay became the first largest snack company, and PepsiCo is the second largest beverage company. And the two pairings of these of the two companies are an excellent pairing because you have the salty snacks and the sweet beverages.
Right.
Lisa, continue.
The background, yes, the background. PepsiCo is a beverage and food company. They are headquartered in Purchase, New York, founded in 1965. They have won several awards that they have for overall business performance. They have 9 awards, sustainability, 6 awards, and diversity and engagement, or 4 awards.
In terms of their revenue and profit for 2019, we see that they have many divisions that contribute to these factors. Overall, most of that profit and revenue comes from North American markets. we see that the graph is split up by division. So we see FLNA, that's Frito-Lay North America, QFNA, Quaker Foods North America, PBNA, PepsiCo Beverages North America. Then we have Latin America in yellow. You have Europe in light blue. EMESA, which is Asia, Middle East, South Africa division in the green. And APAC, which is the Asian Pacific, Australia,
okay, go ahead.
China. APAC is the Asian Pacific, Australia, and China division. So right now we see that the Frito-Lay North America and Pepsi Beverages North America really make up most of the revenue of last year, and that those are the largest contributors also to the operating profit. And what we'll see later in the analysis is perhaps a growing focus on those developing markets and trends that we're going to go towards in making sure that the future of Pepsi is strong in those areas.
Yeah, that sure is a good point. The majority of operating results is in the mature markets of North America and Europe. When you add those, you get just about everything. One thing to pay attention to, and that is Frito-Lay. You can see in the top pie chart, Frito-Lay North America, before we add in Frito-Lay's products in other regions, accounts for about 25% of revenue. But when we go down to the lower pie chart, we see that it represents 45% of operating profit. So from 25 to 45 signifies that Frito-Lay must be quite profitable and more profitable than the other divisions. And that if in fact we add Frito-Lay's results outside of North America, in Europe and Latin America and elsewhere, it accounts for more than half of the profit of this corporation. So although we usually think of PepsiCo as a company that makes Pepsi-Cola a beverage, it turns out that the snack foods are the most substantial contributor of profit in this corporation. And most folks are not aware of that, but in fact, that's the truth.
Back to Lisa.
Hi. PepsiCo's business portfolio, the long-term attractiveness of the beverages and snacks within PepsiCo's business portfolio is based on its unique market positions. PepsiCo brands offer an extensive variety, providing fun, flavor, and healthy choices. Finding a cohesive, engaging way to communicate the breadth and depth of its portfolio is critical to PepsiCo's success.
And continuing, Lisa.
Thank you. The portfolio unifies PepsiCo's entire suite of beverages and snack food under one umbrella, yet retains the distinct personality and style of each individual brand. Included are 23 different complementary brands of beverages and foods, emphasizing variety and choice to meet the needs of a consumer market.
Thank you. We'll now go to Ashley for a review of the history of PepsiCo.
Okay, here's the main points that we felt as a team really contributed to what PepsiCo is today. And we'll get into more detail in these further down in our slides. But in 1965, Frito-Lay and Pepsi merged to become PepsiCo. In 1966, they expanded into Europe and Japan. In 1974, they started selling in the Soviet Union. In 1982, they opened their first operation in China. And in 1989, they acquired Walker's Crisp in the UK. In 1991, they started a joint venture with Unilever, making ready-to-drink teas. And in 1994, they did a venture with Starbucks, making ready-to-drink coffee beverages. In 1998, they acquired Tropicana. In 2001, they acquired Quaker, which gave them Gatorade as well. And in 2006, Indra Nooyi became CEO. In 2006, they acquired Naked. In 2011, they acquired Wim Bildan in Russia. In 2018, Ramon Laguarta became CEO, and in 2019 they adopted a new vision.
Ramon LaGuarta is a pretty remarkable guy. Do you guys can you sort of summarize what his background is?
We have a slide on him a little bit further down.
Okay, he's a Spaniard who was CEO of PepsiCo's 2 international divisions, and so he's especially talented in international business, which may give you an idea of what the directors thought was important when they selected Senor LaGuarta to be the CEO.
In 1965, like I said, that's when PepsiCo formed, merging Frito-Lay and Pepsi-Cola, and this just
Right.
put them on the track to become the most recognized beverage and convenience food maker in the world.
Yeah, you may not want to read all of these because essentially what's in these frames appears to be what's in your timeline.
Right.
So as we go through these, you may just want to mention anything that strikes you as especially important or noteworthy.
This just gave PepsiCo a presence in Eastern Europe and Japan,
Yeah.
which expanded their market. When PepsiCo started in 1974 selling in the Soviet Union, they became the first American consumer goods company to do so. But what made it so interesting is that their ruble is not freely traded on world currency markets, so profits from the Soviet Union cannot be exported in cash, and they in turn gave us vodka.
Right.
That way. And then in 1990, that was amended, and they also gave us merchant ships.
Yeah, Donald Kendall was quite the international diplomat as well as businessman, and he wanted to get a position in Russia, but at that time the ruble was not a hard currency. So if we had been paid in rubles, we couldn't have spent the money. And so he had to figure a way to get something of equal value, and he agreed to be paid in vodka. And PepsiCo became the exclusive distributor of Stolichnaya in the United States. Pretty smart move. He was a pretty smart guy.
This expansion into China just gave us a way into the market in China.
Yeah.
The acquisition of Walker's gave PepsiCo the leading snack food of the UK and made them the largest provider in the UK. The joint venture with Unilever brought together 2 of the largest consumer goods companies in the world, and it gave people ready-to-drink teas, which was a new product. And the same with Starbucks, that gave ready-to-drink coffee a platform when they joined that venture. It's okay, you can move on. The acquisition of Tropicana was important because it was the largest at the time, with PepsiCo paying $3.3 billion to acquire them. And the acquisition of Quaker gave them Gatorade, which is the largest sports drink, but it also became the largest ever acquisition for Pepsi when they paid $13.4 billion investment in stock into Quaker.
Yeah, huge.
Indra Nooyi is important for many reasons, but she helped transform PepsiCo into what it is today. She had an eye of where she wanted PepsiCo to be and what the future was going to be as far as snack foods and beverages, and she anticipated the shift into healthier options, and she really advocated for that type of lifestyle, and she brought that company into the future with those products, but led to an 80% sales growth in the 12 years that she was CEO.
Yeah, she really was a remarkable CEO. In addition to having a vision of what PepsiCo ought to be in terms of the products it offered, I'm sure you'll be talking later on about the kind of company that she wanted it to be as a contributor to society, and to be a company that set a standard for the way companies ought to behave as companies rather than just as generators of profit for shareholders. A very enlightened CEO.
This acquisition was important because it gave PepsiCo that first real healthy product to offer the health conscious consumer. And it really stayed with Noy's vision of becoming a better company and offering better for you products.
Mm-hmm.
The Wheel Mill Dan is the second largest acquisition in PepsiCo's history. It's one of the biggest foreign investments, but it also gave PepsiCo a way into the dairy business because they were a big dairy seller and they already had a big juice presence. So it gave them a way into that market. Ramon LaGuardia, who's now CEO, like you said, was a global leader before becoming CEO for PepsiCo, but he's born in Spain, speaks 6 languages, but he also kind of takes that same aspect as far as Noy did and wanting to become a more international company with a better for you product added to their portfolio. And this is just a small size of some of PepsiCo's products. It doesn't have everything because we couldn't possibly put all their products up here, but these are some more of their popular products. And down on the bottom, you'll see some of those healthier options that they're bringing in with the juice and the Kavita and all the new waters that they're bringing. And then you see some of the well-known products like Pepsi and Mountain Dew and Frito-Lay.
All right, thank you, Ashley. We'll now go to Lisa for the mix of revenues and what industries those come from.
This is, I think this slide, we should have moved it up because
Go back one.
This is where, please go back, yes.
Right there.
The professor was talking about the mix of net revenue between the beverages and the food from slide 6 that Seth was talking about. This shows the food snacks are more at 54% than they were for the beverages at 46%.
And Lisa, if you'll continue.
And the mission statement, create more smiles with every sip and every bite. And they break down their mission statement for their consumers and for their customers, for the associates and communities. Yeah, planet and shareholders.
Boy, they cover it all. Of course, this is what's in their publications, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Here's a different way to look at mission.
Ashley, if you will, explain to us the Abel's model in PepsiCo.
Okay, we're going to go into Abel's model, and this first picture is just a picture of what Abel's model is. We can go, yeah. So for served markets, PepsiCo targets teenagers to adults, and their target market likes the convenience and the grab-and-go product. But the markets they serve are supermarkets, convenience stores, online retailers, vending machines, and restaurants. And PepsiCo products are sold globally in over 200 countries. The unmet needs they have, or the demand is increasing, like we've been talking about, for just healthier options such as bottled water and uncarbonated beverages. And they're starting to now get into that more and more so. They've just picked up kombucha, which is a fermented product, and that people who are more concerned with gut health and worried about what they're putting in their body and stuff. So that need is not really fully being met yet. And just the conventional needs of people and consumers in North America as opposed to Europe and all the other regions that they serve in, they're not the same. So you've got growing markets that need to be met by certain demographics, tastes of different people around the world.
Sorry, it didn't advance.
The distinctive competencies of PepsiCo, or their research and development, really gives PepsiCo the platform to bring innovative new flavors and snacks to their customers. And PepsiCo uses internationally recognized athletes and stars for media advertising, like the King of Pop over here. PepsiCo has the ability to perform market research to learn the interests of the public and really apply to its advertising to apply to the consumer and to reach out to them. And PepsiCo has the ability to offer its products as a package deal because they sell complementary products. They've got snacks and they've got beverages. And the vision, this changed in 2019, but it kind of still goes along with the same vision that Nui had. It just expands on it some. They adopted the vision of winning with purpose, which reflects PepsiCo's ambition to win sustainably in the marketplace. And although PepsiCo's successful, they're not really growing anymore, and LaGuarta's carrying on Nui's vision and focusing on becoming more prevalent in international markets.
I think that's extremely important, Ashley. We'll see later on that PepsiCo's sales seem to have sort of stalled at a particular level. There are reasons for that, but there's a question now about PepsiCo, and that question quite simply is, can PepsiCo continue to be the leader that it has been during Mrs. Nuyi's tenure? And the answer seems to be that it can, if it can accomplish in other parts of the world what it has accomplished in North America and Europe. But of course, those other parts of the world are quite different from the more mature markets that PepsiCo has succeeded in so far. So that's its challenge. And of course, it's appropriate to have a guy like LaGuarta as the CEO, because he's demonstrated that he really can operate in multiple countries because of his experience and his language skills also.
That leads us into what we understand to be the vision, and this is the vision statement that we came up with as a team, which is to regain markets where demand is trending to healthier options and to penetrate all regional markets with products that satisfy customer preferences so that PepsiCo products become the reliable choice globally for sustenance and nutrition.
Good statement.
We'll now move into our environmental analysis. Earlier, we had net revenues divided up by divisions. This graph shows net revenue divided up by countries where PepsiCo is present. And of course, native, we see that the majority is in the United States. It has a growing market in Europe, and then it has a very small market in those developing countries in South America, China, and then all of the countries represented in gray. As we said earlier, the CEO, LaGuarta, is multilingual. He's European. He has a world view. And in last year's annual report, he said the following: our success depends in part on our ability to grow our business in developing and emerging markets, including Mexico, Russia, the Middle East, Brazil, China, and India. Here we have defined the economic indicators. We have gross domestic product with the purchasing power parity. We have the GDP per capita, unemployment, and population. So what we have to do is look at the different graphs and understand how they relate to one another. In GDP, we see the two most important items are the fact that China, represented in orange, and India, represented in gray, are increasing at a much higher and faster rate than the other countries. But if we look diagonally down at population, we also see that China and India have the highest populations, with India especially growing and soon to be overcoming the population of China. When we understand those two, we go back up and look at GDP per capita, and then we understand that even though they have a lot of wealth, per individual, they do not have a lot of wealth because there's so many people there. So we see that they have low purchasing power per individual. This will be important for PepsiCo to understand when they go into those markets, they need to have priced items for for people to be able to purchase them. Also, we see unemployment with, unfortunately, let's see here. Looks like
Brazil.
That's right. Brazil and the United States are leading, with the countries included here, leading in unemployment. We'll see unemployment increase after, this year hits the record books.
Mm-hmm. Brazil and India. I think the green line is the green line of the U.S. or India?
It's unfortunately the United States.
I'll be darned. Okay. But the U.S. is got down at lower unemployment. I'm tempted to say that the top two lines are Brazil. The blue line is certainly Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The green line is the one that confuses me, only because the U.S. is certainly not at 8% unemployment. It is today after the coronavirus, but back in 2019, I think we were down at about under 3%. We were at essentially full employment. That's a bit of a head scratcher there.
Yeah, these came from the International Monetary Fund site.
Right, they sure do.
Mm-hmm. And likewise, here we see inflation, where interestingly, Brazil, Russia, and India have seen deflation. Those are the yellow, gray, and top blue line. They've seen deflation in recent years. And then the other interesting factor I see on this is China, where we see large spikes in China. We see a smaller frequency in the the EU, UK, and USA. When you see this on scientific graphs, you almost want to say that China is a control and the others are a response, which is very, unfortunate to realize the dependency that some of these countries like us have on China. So in conclusion from that study, GDP is growing rapidly in China and India. The population is large there, so per person, the purchasing power isn't large. So marketers will have to keep that in mind, keep price points low. Brazil and USA are leading in unemployment. There's a lot of opportunities in developing countries. But like I said, they need to focus on being high volume, low price in order to make that profit. And PepsiCo must pursue strategies to maintain market position in the developed countries where it currently is.
Right. And of course, the reason for that is that they're the cash cows. We need to generate the earnings and the cash flow from those countries so that we can invest in the developing countries.
Absolutely. Here we go into the consumer economy indicators. As shown here, we'll hit all four of these items in the following slides. The first being the food and beverage price trend. This is from the Fred. We see a steady increase over the years, and only in certain circumstances do we see drop. So we see a recession in the gray vertical line that caused a little bubble and a slight decrease just for a moment before it began to increase again.
Incidentally, for folks who are watching this video, and they may not be just in our UMO community, this is going to be recorded in the oh boy, I can't think of it now. I've got a mental block. The
Recession.
YouTube. There you go.
Ah.
And so people outside of our community may see this video. So for those of you who may not recognize it, FRED is the Federal Reserve Economic Database, and this team has drawn on that database, as well as Seth pointed out, the International Monetary Fund. So most of what you're seeing here is pretty reliable information.
and the data spans from 2000 to 2020. So here we show the savings rate, where savings rate is typically affected by recessions. We see during periods of high economic uncertainty, like we're experiencing right now, it tends to induce a higher savings rate. So people aren't going out and spending. All of a sudden, they're holding on to that money. Consumer installment debt typically refers to large purchases such as homes, automobiles. For industry, it could represent machinery, heavy investments.
Mm-hmm.
And we see here highlighted was the mortgage crisis, where we saw a large dip that year.
This chart in particular shows consumer debt as a proportion of disposable income. So as a portion of what people can spend for discretionary items. And we can see that it's been coming up. Now that we have the coronavirus crisis, that's a bit of a problem, because people have not saved adequately and may not have a real secure position as unemployment and other financial strains fall upon us. And of course, we've all seen in the news that as a result of the coronavirus, we've had this really, really high number of people applying for unemployment insurance. And we don't expect that the debt service payments are going to be quite as affordable. But anyway, this is debt service payments as a percent of disposable income. And you can see that people have had more debt. And so as a proportion of their incomes, that debt service has risen. And that represents a little bit of a problem as we go forward, more than a little. Now I've got to make the thing advance. I'm sorry. There you go.
Perfect. Likewise, revolving consumer debt. It typically peaks at the start of a recession and then the trend declines until the economy recovers, and then it starts increasing again. So we should see, if this were to continue to the right, we would see a peak in this time frame and then a decline until the economy recovers again.
Yeah, I think we just reached the peak. I think we'll see it come down now because of the recession.
So in summary, the food and beverage price trends have been continually rising. The savings rate, installment debt, and revolving debt, these are all affected by the economy and the condition of it. So we're going to be seeing a lot of activity here. We have been in the last month, retirement accounts. We've seen it with bank loan rates, savings rates. And so it's very interconnected. So I have at the bottom, the COVID-19 pandemic will cause a drop in our GDP and employment and affect these factors that we've already discussed. But when it's recovered, when we get out of quarantine, we should see aggressive growth and some serious opportunities for money making.
We want to hold all these thoughts in the back of our mind as we move into the next stage of the assessment. But one of the things we want to ask is, how well equipped is PepsiCo to deal with the effects of this pandemic, the coronavirus? And one of the things we'll want to ask is, does PepsiCo have a strong enough financial condition to withstand an economic onslaught? So what does its capitalization look like? Does it have a lot of debt? Is its leverage rate high or low? Companies with high leverage are going to have a harder time withstanding the effects of a recession, or what could be even worse than a recession, depending on how long the effects of the coronavirus last. we just want to hold that in the back of our mind as we move further into this assessment.
Lisa, if you will, continue with the industrial economic indicators.
Okay. The industrial economic indicators, we are going to be going over these. This one is the economic indicator. It measures the total output in the United States in manufacturing. And this slide actually depicts the general health of the economy. The manufacturing section includes chemicals, foods, drinks, machinery, electronics, and cars. And manufacturing is the most important sector and accounts for 78% of the total economy.
No.
Total production.
No.
Total production. Total
This,
manufacturing production.
yeah. The consumer sector represents about 2/3 or more. The industrial sector is closer to perhaps 20%. But what we see is a favorable trend in industrial production right up until, the next time these charts are issued, we're going to see a drop again because of what's happened to economies all over the world. And the significance of this graph for PepsiCo is the ability of the industrial sector to employ people. As output goes up, so does employment. And the folks who work in these industries tend to get higher wages, so they can afford products that are maybe a little more expensive, certainly buy lots of PepsiCo and Frito-Lay product just because, they make high wages. But so this has been pretty good for PepsiCo up until the very end of this chart. And now what we are interested in is to see what happens as we move into the recession. Okay.
Okay. The capacity utilization rate is when this slide shows the rate for the entire United States, and the economic significance of the capacity utilization is shown as a percentage and is an indicator of inflation pressures. So when market demands increase, the higher the capacity utilization rates. And if the demand goes down, then the capacity utilization rates go down.
Yeah, so when we get up to about 80% of capacity utilization, that is when that's the proportion of output capacity that our industrial base is at. And of course, that differs from industry to industry. That creates the demand for new industrial machinery, new machinery and equipment. Also, it does have an effect when it gets that high on prices. Here we see that we are significantly below 80%, and because of the stage that we're now entering, it's unlikely that there will be a great deal of demand for machinery and equipment. Also, it indicates that there will be less demand for, once again, what we just saw in the prior chart, less demand for people working in those high-paying industries. So all in all, the industrial sector is not painting a real encouraging picture for PepsiCo. Here's corporate profits.
Okay. Corporate profits, this is across the United States, are closely watched as U.S. economic indicators. And
they've been flat.
Yeah.
Until this year.
Yeah, right.
Five-year interest rates are the interest rates that are typically used for capital investments such as modernizing equipment and increasing capacity.
Yeah, and they've been very attractive.
Mhm. The 10-year interest rates are the interest rates that typically are used for mortgages.
And for building, for industrial machinery and equipment, mortgages tend for new plant to build a whole new factory would extend longer, but we would expect to see this kind of interest rate for machinery and equipment, big machinery and equipment. But you can see whether we look at this one or this one, or I guess that's all we have. But we see in these two charts declining interest rates. So in the past, it's been fairly easy if you're credit worthy to borrow money in order to acquire machinery and equipment or to build a new plant. But laying on additional debt has not resulted in a great deal of interest expense. So borrowing capital has been affordable. And Mrs. Newey picked up on that. She understood that and correctly estimated that these trends would be pretty long lasting. As a result, she felt comfortable in raising the capital to do large acquisitions, such as in Russia and when Tropicana was acquired. These were big deals, but although a lot of money was borrowed, surprisingly low amounts of interest expense were incurred as a result. So Mrs. Newey was a pretty smart lady when it came to finance. Unfortunately, she was not clairvoyant when it came to the economic fortunes of Russia, where things didn't turn out quite as she planned after she made those investments.
The industrial economic summary, the previous recessions and depressions tell us that the COVID-19 will greatly impact all industrial economic indicators. Most of the indicators are expected to continue falling until the quarantine is over, followed by a sharp increase.
We'll now go into the market analysis.
Who's doing that?
I'll start the first slide after this. What we have here is a grocery sales trend, and this has not been adjusted for seasonality. For the purpose of showing sales trends in a particular year, the lowest month of the year for sales in groceries is in February. The highest is in December. And then we see this trend is just continually increasing over time. So people are eating more, is what we gather from this. But what happens in a recession? It flatlines. So we see that it increases and then it flatlines as shown in 2008 to 2009. So it'll be interesting to see what happens during this recession of the COVID-19, because it's a quarantine. The only thing we can do right now is eat. So I'm curious to see where this trend will go. We said that this might affect PepsiCo, but PepsiCo is a food provider. So sales might be up as long as this hasn't greatly affected their supply chain.
Okay.
Here we have an age population projection, courtesy of the professor. And what we have here is the largest market currently from now until 2030 is the 25 to 44 age group. It's also an increasing market, as is the seniors age 65 and older. So in looking at those, I picked out two items that were particularly interesting to me. In 2018, PepsiCo acquired Health Warrior, makers of high protein snack bars. And in 2019, they acquired Muscle Milk, which is a high protein shake. And I thought to myself, these are two products that can be consumed by both of those age groups. I see professionals, 25 to 44 on the go, need a high protein snack, need to grab it quick. I see seniors being served Ensure, and I see Pepsi wanting to squeeze in on that money. And here's a high protein shake that they've acquired and stepped into that market. So they can either provide stuff for the health conscious or for those that are looking to supplement their nutrition.
Very insightful, sir.
Thank you.
So like Seth was saying in the last graph, the Pepsi Live for Now campaign, there's a picture of it at the bottom. It was really geared to appeal to 18 to 35-year-olds who are the up-and-coming biggest population factor. 18 to 24-year-olds drink the most soft drinks, but in general, they represent a minority of our overall population. And the next age demographic from 24 to 35 is the largest group of the population and the second largest in terms of consumption. After age 35, there seems to be a bit of a decrease in soft drink consumption, which would help to explain why Pepsi is pursuing non-carbonated beverages and healthier options. So here we have a graph of soda consumption by age. So you can see the low line for small children. That highest line now between 2013 and 2014 is ages 20 to 39. And the next highest is ages 12 to 19. The geography of PepsiCo has its basis in that they're a multi-divisional structure based on geographical market segments. They are located in all sorts of places, and they have business lines that can cater to each of the different geographical places that they're in. It's the dominant drink in Canada. It is the third most popular drink in India, holding 15% of market share, and it has 13% of market share in Russia as of 2005. We're talking about Pepsi Cola, the drink.
Yeah. Incidentally, maybe we should have observed in this last graph that consumption of soda, which is carbonated beverages, is declining as a general proposition, regardless of age group. The folks who are 12 to 19 strike me as being particularly interesting. That's the black line at the top. They're the ones that consume the most, which is not necessarily good for their health, but even that line is coming down. And so it's noteworthy that the so-called soda, which is sweet carbonated beverages, proportionately is definitely experiencing a downturn, a declining trend. Let's see, you were here, weren't you?
So here we're looking at the annual global soda consumption versus GDP per capita. So it's really important to note in this graph that the USA had to be added in at the top. We are off the charts in soda consumption still, even with declining numbers, as we just noted in the last graph. It's notable that Argentina, Chile, Mexico, our South America friends are close second, third, and fourth. So when we're looking at that international strategy and moving into strategy later into the presentation, it's important to realize where the soda consumption is for where we're placing our Pepsi Cola products and entering into new markets. So here we're looking at market shifts. So away from the soda drinks and the snack foods and into the trends that are currently popular. Our 2015 US Grocery Shopper Trends Report shows that consumers look at many data points related to health and wellness rather than just typical claims. So we're going through those things like whole grains, no trans fat, low carb, certified organic. Some people are looking for no dairy at this point, no GMOs. This is a chart of the list of all of those things that people are looking for now, as opposed to past shoppers. Our average consumer now seeks at least 5 claims of this list on the right, and considers 10 nutritional facts on the back as important. So the average consumer is looking at least 5 of those things as compared to the next product side by side to see if those things are listed as a bonus of buying that.
Do the most important factors on this exhibit have anything in common? Is there any pattern here?
I think that whole grain, low sodium, low sugar, high fiber would all appeal to the baby boomer age group that is, they're trying to get healthier maybe. I think that also as we're feeding children, as more and more parents are looking at what they're feeding kids and as obesity rates are going up, we're looking for those things that are certainly going to drive down weight gain and illnesses, high fiber, low sugar, low sodium.
It just would probably, you know, one way to look at this is to say that consumers are most definitely, if we just look at how the big bars versus the little bars, and even the little bars, consumers are looking for health claims, looking for things that keep them healthy and help them avoid getting fat.
So this next one starts to move into our shift of health and wellness. This looks at the percentage of surveyed customers who were willing to pay significantly or moderately more for at least one health or wellness attribute. So that attribute can be something like the label claims we were talking about before, being gluten-free, being whole grain. When you look at the age, which is all the way to the left, people between the ages of 18 and 34 were willing to pay more than those who were 35 to 80 for these health claim products. In annual household income, we have less than 75K per year for the household, showing less interest in health and wellness products, health and wellness attributes of their products than those who were bringing in 75,000 or more. Moving over to children, people with children were more likely to pay more for health and wellness food than people with no children. And recent lifestyle changes. So I think that this probably includes things like sickness, marriage. They say that when you get married, you decide to be more healthier. Children, changes in income, getting a job. All of those different lifestyle changes can contribute to choosing health and wellness attributes in your food more than others. So a summary of our consumer buying intentions, the 2018 Food and Beverage Survey by a consultant firm, LEK, showed that consumers are increasingly paying attention to label claims that products are clean or natural. 60 to 70% of consumers will pay premium prices for natural, ethical, enhanced, or less of food. So this less of means less sodium, less trans fat, less of any of the bad things that we don't want in there. And clean food, clean with quotes because there's not a definition clearly defined of that, is trending for all demographics, with millennials leading the charge. Here we have more of our health and safety trends. A meaningful number of consumers are now thinking about safety from a holistic, long-term perspective, which has led to a blurring of the lines between safety and health and wellness. So before, we would have had the traditional free of harmful elements, which is shown in blue on this graph. And now we have these other factors: clear and accurate labeling, clear information on ingredients and where your food comes from, fewer ingredients, processing, no artificial, and nutritional content. Consumers include the following in their safety definition, and they want health and wellness and transparency, as well as clear labeling.
This is good stuff. This is the kind of stuff that folks at PepsiCo really do consider, both up here. You know, you've got a real pattern, don't you? Here you've got these various, what might be called health claims, the substance, the ingredients of the health claims, and when we get right down to it, you know, the folks who are younger, more aware, better informed, folks who can afford products that are not cheap because sometimes it's more expensive to refine these products and so forth. Folks who have kids and want to take care of their families, and then you know, the people aren't just interested in those, but they want this information provided to them clearly and so forth. You got a pattern here. And again, for those of you out there in Cyberland, I used to be with PepsiCo and did quite a bit of consulting for consumer products companies. And I can tell you that there are panels today all over the world, but certainly at PepsiCo, studying this information and asking, how can we relate to that? How can we respond to it so that you know, we put something on the shelf that the consumer is going to feel good about and want to take off the shelf and take home, and then like it so much they come back and get some more.
So sticking with that health and safety trending that we were just talking about, the graph to the right shows the consumption of water and soda. Soda is also divided up into regular and diet, which you can see towards the bottom and towards the middle for regular soda. And then we have an all soda line and a bottled water line. And you can see in this graph how much bottled water has been gaining over the last 20 or so years. This could be in part due to school cafeterias and government and corporate workplaces eliminating soda in vending machines and trading it out for bottled water, Gatorade, which is another PepsiCo product, and other non-carbonated beverages, and also implementation of soda and sugar taxes in certain states and certain countries.
This is just a dramatic chart. Again, thinking back to when I was in college, versus what I see in the hallways at the university today, what do I see? I see people with backpacks. And what's in the backpack? What do I always see in the little, you know, webbed pocket in the backpack? What's in that pocket?
It's their own water bottle.
Water.
A bottle of water. When I was your age and I was in college, did I ever see A, backpacks on students, but B, people walking around with bottles of water? Are you kidding? Bottles of water? You carry around a bottle of water when we've got water fountains everywhere? You carry around, do you really do that? Uh-huh, yeah. Times do change, don't they?
So moving forward into taste trends, this will tie us back a little bit into our health trends, but it's looking more at what people are looking for their taste. Overall, the most demanded food products are those lacking artificial flavors and preservatives, as of a study done in 2019. Taste trends identified revolved around the increased demand for health foods. So awareness of gut health is leading to the demand of fermented foods such as PepsiCo's Kavita kombucha, increased use of turmeric, ginger, and other adaptogens in their flavor combinations, and exotic citrus flavors are trending to increase the flavor of healthy beverages like sparkling water. So PepsiCo is really hitting this with their Izzy drinks, which are all a fruit flavor of some kind and a matching color. Our non-carbonated beverages, as we demonstrated with that graph of bottled water moving up on soda, are more profitable right now than the traditional soda products, which PepsiCo is best known for. When you put all of these together in this graph, so we've got Tropicana, Lipton, ready to drink, Starbucks, ready to drink, and Gatorade, they're making up more of the revenue than soft drinks for PepsiCo.
Yeah, and we don't even see Aquafina on here, but if you stack up all the bars except the one on the far right, you get a bar much bigger than the one on the far right. So no doubt about it, soft drinks aren't what they used to be in this industry.
So end user trends, looking at food and snacks. Functional foods are really trending, and this is a market growing by 8% per year. And functional foods is something that is good for you, maybe not necessarily what you would reach for if weight or health weren't an option. So going along with that, we have a slogan, it's eat to live, don't live to eat. And a lot of people are trending more that way now. They're eating to feed their body rather than eating to please themselves. Hershey and General Mills are expanding their portfolios to appeal to younger consumers who want healthier snacks. And in response to consumer demand and trends, about 44% of PepsiCo's beverage portfolio in its top 26 beverage markets had under 100 calories per serving. So this is something that they're pursuing, having less calories in their drinks. Here we're looking at preference trends. So our graph shows in gray traditional drivers, and this is a historically significant, large, diverse market. Normally in the past, when we were looking at what people wanted in their foods or in their products that they were buying, they were mostly looking at price, taste, and convenience. And we have this new set of evolving drivers listed on the right in blue. These include health and wellness, safety, social impact, and experience. These evolving drivers, These evolving drivers are increasingly important in the behavior that consumers are doing, and it's moving up to about 50% of consumers who are looking at the evolving drivers rather than the traditional ones. You can change now. These changes in preference trends are creating new challenges and opportunities for manufacturers and retailers such as PepsiCo. Leading some brands, as we discussed, General Mills, is doubling down on strength and focusing more on how to please the new buyer. So in this chart, we have our niche brands, which would have traditionally been something like kombucha or granola. And then on the bottom right, we have traditional big food, which was our cereal, our soda, maybe Gatorade could even fall in there. And then up in the green, we have the new normal. So this is based on those evolving drivers that people are looking for. We have 50% of consumers looking for evolving drivers. And this is where PepsiCo and other big product manufacturers need to be looking. We still have high consumer demand and we have purchase drivers, but it's traditionally more of the niche food that they're looking at.
Okay.
Thank you, Cassandra. Here we have the industry structure for last year's different competitors and PepsiCo. So we have PepsiCo versus Coca-Cola and Monster coming from the beverage industry. And we have Mondelez, Kellogg, and Unilever from the snack foods industry. So what this tells us, we have sales, operating margin, and returns, as in returns on invested capital and return on equity. And then we have the invested capital. So we see in sales that PepsiCo certainly leads in sales, but in operating margin, it becomes a different story. We see competitors like Monster who operate in a niche market. They, if you go to buy a can of Monster, it's going to cost a lot more than a can of Pepsi. So we see higher operating margins there. What else does this tell us? Competitors like Monster also have very little invested capital because they run and create fewer products. Also, Monster runs solely off of equity. So we see that the returns on Monster are the same for ROI, ROE.
That's right. I think this chart is helpful simply because it shows, among other things, that there are not a lot of companies in this category of food and beverages that are incapable of doing battle. PepsiCo certainly stands out there, with Unilever as a big gun, really important. I think that it's especially interesting to look at the operating margin chart, though. We see that PepsiCo's operating margin is not as high as Coke and Monster. Why is that? Well, we get some of the answer when we look over at Mondelez and Kellogg, and their margins are lower than PepsiCo. Why is that? And we remember that chart way up in the beginning that we saw way up here. Let's see if I can find it real quick. If I can't, I'll give up. But it was the distribution channels. And
Yes.
okay, I can't find it, so I will give up. Let's see, I was here. Okay. But to make concentrates, which is what PepsiCo does. PepsiCo doesn't make that thing that goes on the grocery shelf. It makes the concentrate that goes to the bottler that produces what's on the grocery shelf. And the bottler has lots of equipment and machinery and real estate and employees. So it's a pretty high cost business. On the other hand, when PepsiCo makes Frito-Lay and snack foods, it needs the same kind of a factory that the bottler has. Only that factory is a bakery, but still lots of machinery and lots of people working there. And in the food processing industry, because it's so costly, so asset intensive and costly, profit margins tend to be low. When a company makes just those concentrates for beverages like Coca-Cola and Monster, then their profit margins are high. PepsiCo makes both. And so its profit margins are in between Coca-Cola's and Kellogg's or Mondelez. So PepsiCo's sort of half beverage, half snack food, and we get sort of an average or a middle point in its profit margins. Given that that is the case, you got to give PepsiCo a lot of credit for that great big high rate of return on equity, because it's higher than Coca-Cola's and it's higher than Monster's. So somehow PepsiCo is getting this really good rate of return on equity, even though its return on invested capital isn't quite as high. Why is that? We're going to find out pretty soon, but I'll give you a hint. It's because of all that borrowed capital at low interest rates. Okay, let's go on.
Let's go back one more slide.
Oh,
There we go.
Okay.
And there we have the remaining factors of the industry structure, which is the debt and equity, and then the leverage. So we see that long-term debt is in blue in the top graph and shareholder equity in orange. Like I said before, Monster runs solely off of equity. And then we see that that in ratio to one another, in the bottom graph presents the ratio of debt to equity and leverage, or leverage ratio. And we see that Pepsi has high leverage because of all the acquisitions in recent years. So does Kellogg. And so that means it could be vulnerable to another company that has lower leverage in a particular market.
Sometimes there's just no easy explanation, but one of the things that just grabs you here is this industry tends to have a lot of leverage. So at a time like we're facing, when times get rough, companies with a lot of debt, which is what the leverage reflects, may have some difficulty dealing with that debt and still being strategically aggressive. Paying down debt and being strategically aggressive are usually point companies in opposite directions. So this leverage graph here is one that I imagine we'll be hearing a little bit more about as we move through this presentation. I gotta shut up and let you guys do your thing. Okay.
Lisa, if you'll continue.
Okay. The industry structure that we are going to be looking at, we have several different models that we're going to look through. The BCG, the industry life cycle, technology trends, 5 forces analysis, product life cycle, and critical success factors. The BCG matrix, which is also the Boston Consulting Group matrix, and the objective is to have a balanced portfolio of product lines. And the cash cows are your big money makers, and those are the Pepsi, Quaker Oats, the Frito-Lay, and then you have the money that they have from the cash cows can help with the ventures, the new, the risky, what they're going to try and reach out for with the probiotics and the kombucha. And then you have the stars that are already mature in the Life Water and Aquafina and Gatorades. Then you have the ventures that didn't really, you have to be able to make a mental decision that these were not very good, and to recognize that like Crystal Pepsi was a venture that they didn't want to take on. So they needed to let those go, and those were considered the dogs.
Oops.
Okay. This also shows the BCG matrix for PepsiCo according to the countries. The cash cows are definitely the United States and
Europe.
And the stars are China, and the ventures are Canada, India,
Russia.
Canada,
The flag in the
Russia,
middle is Russia.
that one I believe is Brazil. And then we have the UK and
South America.
Brazil.
Brazil.
Brazil. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, and once again, we'd like to have a balanced portfolio. And I think most observers would feel that it's good to have something growing like China. But PepsiCo's involvement in China isn't really large today. So if we were to make these flags according to scale, we'd have a tiny little Chinese flag. We've had great big American and European flags, and Canada might even be down there with a cash cow. And we have Russia and India. Russia would be a little bigger flag than India, because we don't have a whole lot going on there. But I think this was a good idea to put the flags in this BCG matrix. But whether we're looking at products or countries, I think the real question here is, does PepsiCo have enough in the star category? Does it have enough in the venture category? How many of these ventures are moving towards stars? And most observers would feel that PepsiCo needs to do a better job getting things moving in these developing countries with products that are developed to appeal to markets in those countries.
This slide of technology and innovation really is the trend of technology and innovation that PepsiCo is actively pursuing. So we have a few pictures here, and they match up to the points that we're making. Pepsi Spire, which is the lower middle image that we see there, and the Aquafina water station. Now, earlier, Professor was talking about seeing students on campus with water bottles. Well, hey, why can't Pepsi make that their water? Well, that's what the Aquafina water station is. Both of these machines provide flavored drinks based off of either still or sparkling water, and you can get hundreds of flavor combinations. So with that very little, setup cost, and then the marginal cost of those flavorings over time, they have a new product line that they can really profit off of. SnackBot is this motorized cart, and they have it currently on the University of the Pacific for their trial runs. It's a mobile app. You pick up your phone and you order, and this little guy drives to you. You open the lid and take the product. Pretty neat. And then we have Hello Goodness vending machines. These are vending machines. They're up to date. They have, digital payment methods instead of cash. They can take all those payments that you can use your phone, you can use a smart card. But the one thing you won't find on any surface of this vending machine is neither PepsiCo, Pepsi, nor the Pepsi logo. This is healthy. This is branded towards the health conscious. So you're going to see all the new products. You're going to see all those healthy foods, those healthy drinks.
Okay.
Lisa, if you'll continue with our Porter's 5 Forces.
Okay, Porter's 5 Forces, we look at the potential new entry, the buyers, the substitutes, suppliers, and competitive rivalry. And as for PepsiCo, they do have Innovia Market, Universal Nutrition, and Dang Foods. And these are all upcoming companies that are going with a non-GMO, the healthier brands. So these are going to be snack foods that are going to be something that PepsiCo is going to keep an eye on. The substitutes, you definitely have the Coca-Cola, Nestle tea, coffees, waters, healthier snacks and beverages. And the suppliers, they are very big into their farmers and their manufacturing, the raw materials, food processing, and transportation. And their competitive rivalry is definitely Coca-Cola, Mondelez, Nestle, Kellogg's, and Kraft, and Monster.
Okay. Oops, there we go. Well, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's got an attitude tonight.
This actually shows the Porter's 5 Forces by country, the bargaining power of the suppliers and the buyers and the threat of new entrants as per country, and what the totals are and what the averages are across the board.
Okay. So based on this scorecard, where do we find it easiest to do business, the least threatening to profitability, and the most threatening?
Least threatening.
You've got a score of 5 for China, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, so according to your analysis, that suggests that the forces pushing profit down are the strongest. So it must be, according to your analysis, harder to make a profit in China in these industries than elsewhere. On the other hand, you've got 3s for India and Brazil. So the forces pushing profit down and your analysis in those 2 countries are weaker than they are in China, and therefore we would anticipate profit potential to be greater. I'm sorry, he will not, he just won't let me. There is Waffles. Good evening, Waffles, everybody.
Hello, Waffles.
Unbeknownst to you, Waffles has been absolutely giving me fits. I have paid him his ransom, but since he knows this is a big presentation, he wants his recognition. There, I gave it to you. I think he wants me to let him out. Pardon me just a minute. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I'm sorry. That's my dog Waffles, everybody. Okay. So we use the 5 forces then for what purpose? To estimate the profit potential of an industry? in a particular country. Okay, and different folks might come up with different answers, but your guess is that profit potential in India and Brazil is relatively high compared to China, based upon the strength of these forces that push profit down. Different people might come up with different answers, but those were yours, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The product life cycle, and this is generally towards technology, and that's what the snack bot is for PepsiCo. And usually when you have the product life cycle, it's usually the in the embryonic stages, the innovators, the ones that are really wanting to jump on and take on technology and say, let's really look at this and do this. So they're the first ones that initiate technology. And as it goes moving on up into the early adopters and the early majority, then you've got the laggards at the very end who jump on at the very last when the market is saturated. And PepsiCo is using this on their campuses for the snack bot, the Hello Goodness snack bots. The industry life cycle, and this is the embryonic growth and shakeout in mature and decline stages. And this is where their products are currently. Now, the embryonic stage are the new upcoming products, the Life Water, the kombucha, and then you've got the growth stage where they've got the new chips coming out. The shakeout stage is pretty aggressive, and it has the Sabra hummus. The matures are the Gatorades, the Lay's, the Diet Pepsis. And now, unfortunately for Pepsi, we're seeing Pepsi Cola on the decline because we're going for the more healthier options.
Okay. Did I go too far? Yeah.
No, that's it. Perfect.
I'm sorry, this thing just got an attitude. Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. Now we'll go to Ashley for the critical success factors.
Here's their critical success factors, and Seth will get into later the scorecard on these, but you see at the top is leadership, and we've got a picture of Internoye. She's not the CEO anymore, but she had such an impact of where Pepsi is today. Their CEO now is still fairly new. Their research and development and the ability to innovate, their distribution channels, and their advertising and marketing research, which includes their ability to research a market and their consumers and to bring to them a way to market the products that they want to buy. And here's just the summary. PepsiCo is trying to focus on emerging and developing markets. Their soda consumption, of course, is on the decline, with the demand for bottled water and juices on the incline. More consumers are paying a higher price for products that are natural and good for you. Senior and young adult consumers are increasing in number. Most in-demand products are lacking artificial flavors and preservatives, and we have an increased demand for fermented foods.
Thank you. Now we'll go into the capabilities analysis, starting with our financial trends, and then move on to these other points. These numbers were taken again from the International Monetary Fund. So I have here, while the beverage industry earns higher operating margin than the snack industry, but PepsiCo, as we discussed earlier, is involved with both industries. So that's why overall it has a lower operating margin than Monster, Coca-Cola.
That's it. Incidentally, these data are taken from the company's financial statements that were collected, in this case, by Value Line, but you could get the same surveys from Standard & Poor's or Moody's. But in any event, these are the company's financials.
I'm sorry, I said International Monetary Fund. It is from Value Line. That's where the data came from. Yeah. Right. So we've seen stable sales figures for 2018 and 19. But in the last couple of years, we see Unilever improve their operating efficiencies in the operating margin graph on the right bottom, while PepsiCo dropped from 2018 to 2019.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
here we see the returns, and the returns are particularly high, and we'll discuss that again in the goals section about the goals, or about the returns and how Value Line reports them. But here, since the data is collected by them, it's all comparative. We see that it looks like Monster is somewhat volatile, and that the snack food industry is very steady.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Here we see the debt. It's interesting to see this now over a course of time. Of course, Monster operates out of equity. We see years and years of accumulated debt through those acquisitions. And you know, how high do they want to tower? Of course, the rates were low per that graph we saw when they made these acquisitions and took on the debt. And so we see that Coca-Cola is just a little bit below them. So, you know, maybe at a certain point they might be able to use that to Pepsi's disadvantage, unless they reduce that amount of leverage that they're holding.
Right. I think the leverage ratios are informative. We can, among other things, we talk a lot about PepsiCo having high leverage, but it's striking that Coca-Cola's leverage has come up pretty much at the same rate, and is approaching the same level as PepsiCo. So obviously, companies in this industry have been investing in new products, new markets, and risky ventures because debt was relatively inexpensive. And we can see even companies in theoretically industries that aren't very risky, such as breakfast cereal. Look at Kellogg's leverage ratio. It's just as high as PepsiCo's. So these have been days when companies have not been reluctant to make risky investments. Now that we are in the age of the coronavirus, we'll see how wise those investments turned out to be.
So in summary, those sales have been flat in recent years. PepsiCo needs to expand because of the saturation in the North American market. And as we've discussed, they should lower their leverage,
sure,
pending what might happen in the future. Cassandra, if you'll pick it up with the profit trends.
Absolutely. So our profit trends are overall profit trends for the industry. These aren't specific to PepsiCo necessarily. They're just relevant for PepsiCo. The first one that we have is an uptick in beverage consumption globally. So this is all beverage consumption: water, soda, non-carbonated, still beverages. It's just interesting to note. And then the next one is an improvement in packaging materials is expected to foster an increase in beverage sales. This one was particularly interesting to me because as people are looking for the healthier options that we talked about in market analysis, they're also looking at responsible sourcing, even as far as bottles go. We're buying more reusable waters instead of more bottled water, which definitely impacts PepsiCo. As companies like PepsiCo are learning how to use recycled material and learning how to market the use of these more appropriate containers and packaging, they're going to have more sales because of that. Looking at the profit trends in food and snacks, we see that over 5 years from 2019 to 2024, snack production industry revenue is predicted to continue to rise as improving economic conditions are projected. So we could probably argue that COVID-19 is going to interrupt improving economic conditions. However, definitely for myself, there's still a demand for snacks as I'm quarantined into my house. And then we have an anticipated,
I'm sorry.
And then we have an anticipated increase in per capita disposable income. Again, COVID-19 could perhaps impact this profit trend. However, as the economy bounces back from everyone being in quarantine and everyone comes back to work, this disposable income might still stick around and increase.
Sure.
PepsiCo's corporate structure is it's actually quite a large matrix. And we have that kind of laid out visually as a left column of the food divisions, or the market divisions rather. And we've listed those before, but I'll go through them real quick. We have PepsiCo America's beverage. We have Quaker Foods, PepsiCo Europe, and then we have the EMEA, which is Asia, Middle East, and Africa, and then Latin America. And then we have Frito-Lay, which is one
Division.
One division, yeah. And then across the page, we have the functional corporate groups, which are involved in all those other market divisions. So you have communications, global categories, operations, talent management, government affairs and legal, finance, human resources, and R&D. See here, we have a little quote from Nguyi. Creating units that span North American and international markets, as well as developed and developing markets, allow us to better share best practices among our North America and international businesses, while providing valuable development opportunities for our senior executives. Now, this structure was created under her. So it was something different before, but then she created this organization.
Well, that's a good point. During our discussions, I think I may have pointed out, and it's worth pointing out again, we see this as a two-dimensional matrix, but matrices in corporations sometimes get even more complicated than this, because really, in addition to these product line divisions, we've got divisions for geographic areas. I know they're mentioned in the items on the left, but those are really business units. We've got responsibilities for Asia, responsibilities for Russia, responsibilities for Europe, responsibilities for South America, and so forth, and Europe. So in fact, there's probably a third dimension of this matrix. So instead of being a nice flat arrangement like this, it's probably a cube with 3 dimensions instead of 2. And the reason I point that out is that these things can get pretty complicated, can't they? Just a 2-dimension matrix gets really complicated. But if in fact it's got 3 dimensions, which it does, it becomes almost unwieldy. And during your coursework, I know that you've taken quizzes and passed them when the question came to what's the problem. And of course, one of the problems is that managers spend a great deal of time in meetings just figuring out who's going to be the one that gives the order this time. Is it the product division person? Is it the manufacturing person at headquarters? Is it the country president in China? Who's going to run this project or this particular campaign to market or introduce a new product? And it gets to the point where people are spending so damn much time meeting, they don't have nearly enough time to actually do what they're talking about. The way they solve that problem is hiring more people to do the work while the executives are talking. And that becomes rather expensive as well as awkward. So bottom line is many companies have introduced matrices, and a large portion of them have given up and gone back to something simpler. Some industries, on the other hand, just have to have matrices because of the complexity of the markets and industries that they're in. And PepsiCo is probably one of those.
Cassandra, if you'll continue with our raw material analysis.
Sure. So looking at the raw materials that are used in manufacturing beverages and products for PepsiCo, there are a ton of them. They include apple, corn, rice, potatoes, oranges, oats, vegetables, oils, wheat, fruit concentrates, aspartame, corn sweeteners. The list really goes on because they have such a wide range of products. All of those materials also come with packaging materials. So aside from just the food products and the drink products that we need, we also have plastic resin, film packaging, aluminum, and natural gas. and after manufacturing, the products are delivered in bulk to the next level of consumer. The three main components
Oops.
The three main components to PepsiCo's supply chain management are direct-to-store delivery model, collaboration, and integration.
Thank you. Next, we'll move into regulation trending, and these include aspects of responsible advertising, social responsibility, sustainable governance, sustainability and corporate governance. Yeah.
Right.
So for sustainability, we have some major points that PepsiCo had.
Seth, pardon me for interrupting again. We've been at this for quite a bit of time now, and we've still got a lot of material to cover. So wherever you guys are able to take a slide like this and just sort of summarize what it's about, and maybe a couple of the main thoughts, but maybe not go through everything, might help us to move just a little bit faster. And we want to look for opportunities to do that. Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, I invite those to read into this that PepsiCo has taken initiatives to reduce carbon footprint with their vehicles. They've got recycling initiatives, energy efficiencies, which has produced some great savings, and water conservation, which both saved water, made them more money, but also leaves a great impact on local economies where they operate, including watershed projects.
That's the way to do it.
In terms of social responsibility, they're selective with their farmers and make sure that they meet their standards. They've set goals to lower sugar content in their drinks. And they also have diversity goals, including things like staffing women into 50% of their global manager positions.
Good.
An important fact for corporate governance is that in the history of PepsiCo, board of directors can be either inside or outside directors. And currently, the CEO is also the chairman of the board of directors. The CFO is the vice chairman. And then additionally on the board are independent or outside directors. And then we have listed here committees that those board members are on and how that corporate governance operates.
This is PepsiCo's governance structure. Okay.
Here we have the CSF report card. We've taken our critical success factors, we've weighed them, totaling 1, and given rates per PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, and Mondelez. And we feel that PepsiCo is winning between the competitors.
Okay. And very, very interesting. You've got them a decided winner over Mondelez, and Coke a little closer.
So moving into the functional strengths of PepsiCo, the first one that we're going to cover is efficiency. As of 2017, PepsiCo's operation strategy included improving process and capacity design, maximizing productivity cost rations, and advancing inventory management to focus on operations through computerized monitoring of inventory. And this computerized inventory is supposed to increase overall efficiency.
Okay. Just to fix this, we're going to put this PowerPoint on the Moodle shell, and I think that word's probably ratio, so a little quick fix there. Okay.
Moving down into quality, we have quality in a lot of different aspects of PepsiCo's operation management right now. We have supply chain management, where they're trying to diversify and distribute supply chain hubs to allow for fluctuations in demand. So what this means is that across different geographies, they may have different hubs that are run different ways. So they can say there's an increased demand over here and we can send more versus sending everything uniformly. As far as scheduling improvements, looking at our resource of people, we're seeing that we have reliability with appropriate staffing and coverage. And then looking at quality as excellence, we're diversifying the product line to provide foods that tailor to healthier foods rather than high sugar, high fat.
Quality is also a reliability factor for PepsiCo. they're compliant to the FDA with the Food Safety Modernization Act, and they also subject themselves to a third-party audit through the Global Food Safety Initiative. They're able to trace any problems of consumer product back to the manufacturing site, back to the agricultural site.
Recent innovations undertaken by PepsiCo include new flavor combinations and formulations, easier packaging and portability of oatmeal, and new and improved snack food flavors like Cool Ranch Doritos, which have gained a ton of popularity lately.
Good.
This is a list of our major new products. So on the left, we have beverages like kombucha and life water, naked juices. They've even come out with their own brand of oat milk for the non-dairy people. And then we have snacks listed on the right. Naked has come out with its own line of protein bars. We have the Sabra hummus, portable oatmeal products that you can take to work with you, and Bear products, which are chips made of apples, coconuts, and bananas.
They look nice. Has anybody ever drunk kombucha?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
Is it good?
Yes, of course it is.
Okay.
Do you drink beer and like other fermented foods?
Oh, is beer fermented? Oh, okay.
Moving into customer responsiveness, their matrix organizational structure, which we looked at a few minutes ago, allows for more successful responsiveness. When we looked at that matrix, could we flip back there for just a second?
Yes, ma'am. The matrix?
Yes.
I could have done a better job of this. I'm sorry. Where'd the matrix go?
Oh, it was right. Like a few more up, like two more.
The organizational.
That one.
There you go.
So when you look at that top row where it has communications, global categories, talent management, this is how they're meeting that customer responsiveness. They have all of these categories looped into one, and then they have the multi-divisional structure across geographies so that they can appeal to each of the different markets that they're trying to serve. And if you call in and you need help with something, you can be sent to somewhere where there's a known policy and everything is governed in the same way. Sorry.
Well, no, that was very good. Let's see, were we here or
We
were
were in
we?
customer responsiveness, like two more down.
Okay, there we are.
So again, they're appealing to different demographics, and these healthier snacks that they're coming out with, we went through some of them before, their major new products. These are improving quality and also contributing to the customer needs that are being shown in market research.
Yeah, exactly. The market research indicates what it is the folks are looking for. And PepsiCo then has managed to respond or is responding.
So looking at some functional weaknesses of PepsiCo, we have this matrix organizational structure, which you were just saying, creates this super complicated, lots of meetings, clumsy, bureaucratic structure where there can be power struggles between different parts of the company. You were saying they have different people doing different things and we're not sure how to delegate. There's also this system of who's going to pay for what campaign. So do I want that department to pay for this or the other department? And with a matrix structure, it's a lot harder to delegate which department is actually paying for something. This falls also under accountability because if you have so many different groups in on this meeting, and something falls through the cracks or something doesn't get launched the way that they thought it was going to, what group do we hold accountable for that?
Well said.
And then another functional weakness may come into innovation. Though PepsiCo has done a wonderful job with their R&D group, it has been really difficult for the beverage and snack food industry to achieve mind-blowing innovation the way that other people have, the way that the computer industry has, or the way that even the book industry moving on to tablets. It's just been really hard for beverages and for snack foods to gain technological advances in the same way that other areas and other industries have been.
Good point.
Looking at exceptional resources and capabilities of PepsiCo, I think that one of the big ones is history of mergers and acquisitions. They have had so many successful ones. This includes Tropicana, Quaker Oats, SodaStream, more recent ones like Kavita and Sabra. The learning effects and efficiency of acquiring these new modalities is the exceptional resource. So there's all of this experience about how to go through with a successful M&A that other companies don't have. The next one is economies of scale. And this is looking at the production volume of PepsiCo. It's so large and widespread that PepsiCo can kind of overpower, for lack of a better word here, the competition and other market entrants. They hold a lot of power and they hold a lot of leverage over these other entrants.
A lot of market leverage, as well as scale economy, as the ability to accomplish low cost. Just a brief moment, and again, this is something for everybody watching this video, not even necessarily this class. But the point's been made that the way PepsiCo has grown over the years has been through mergers and acquisitions. And that's exactly right. Now, maybe this is just for the MBA students and wherever they are out in cyberspace that's watching this. You know, how did Mrs. Nguyen arrive at her position? Well, she got her MBA. First, she went to school in India. She got her MBA at Yale. She specialized in corporate planning and strategy, worked for a couple of consulting firms, became vice president for corporate strategy at PepsiCo, and then suddenly became vice president, chief financial officer and strategy, vice president for strategy and chief financial officer. Rather a remarkable career. But she did it through corporate planning and strategy. Look at how PepsiCo has grown through acquisitions and divestments. Ladies and gentlemen, would you like to have a fast track in corporate industrial management? If you would, I'd like to recommend that you consider a career in corporate planning and strategy, because this is one place where change really gets made in corporations. This is where corporate concepts evolve and change, and this is where corporate change actually gets made to happen in a very dynamic fashion. So if it, you know, there was and is a department of corporate planning at PepsiCo, and that's the department that produced all of these rather remarkable acquisitions. The same thing is going on at Lever, and you know, so many corporations around the world. You want to have a lot of fun and a fast track career, get into corporate planning and development. The mere fact that that's what I did has nothing to do with those remarks whatsoever.
Looking at some more exceptional resources and capabilities, we have this expansive research and development platform globally that PepsiCo has created. It focuses on new and improved food and beverage formulations and allows it to lead in the market. Indra Nooyi has also been an exceptional resource and capability for PepsiCo. As we've discussed multiple times throughout the slideshow, she really took PepsiCo into a new, healthier direction, creating something transformational from what it was before her leadership. There was an 80% sales growth under her tenure as CEO.
So in summary, PepsiCo is focused on becoming more environmentally responsible, sustainable, socially responsible, and excelling in efficiency and quality, customer responsiveness. But in some regards, they're still lagging in innovation compared to others in the industry.
Yeah, I'm not sure that last bullet is correct, but if you inserted the word effective or long-term, long-lasting, PepsiCo has been very innovative. We've seen that in all the different products that it's developed, both as beverages and snack foods. Remarkably productive. But what is it that has made PepsiCo grow and become as big as it is? And the answer is those acquisitions we were talking about. PepsiCo is giving its all to developing innovative products, and it's doing well, but it's really hard to innovate and create a new product or a new product category like kombucha. I mean, great, we've got this fermented stuff, okay, but is that going to be the equivalent of life water, but it's really, really hard to produce a long-term big winner, and that's why they are so few and far between. But PepsiCo certainly has been innovative, but unfortunately, just being innovative isn't enough. You have to create winners, the kind that can move over to the star category on that BCG matrix, and that's why you have to have so many products in that venture category, because your odds of creating a venture that make it to a star are kind of thin. Very difficult to do.
Ashley, if you'll introduce us to the next section.
Okay.
I think you've got the first slides, though.
Oh, I do, yes. Okay. We have our goals hierarchy. And this is the steps to the mission success. So we have our levels of achievement. And we feel that PepsiCo's already passed the acceptable risk step. They've assumed risk through investments. They've raised that debt and leverage. And now they've moved on to the superior financial results as their mission. There we go. So PepsiCo desires to increase the revenue after years of flat sales, and they want to reduce that leverage to be more competitive. So now after that, they'll be able to move on to the favorable market position, expand into new markets and segments, and then gain dominance in those areas. And then once they can do that, they can move on to long-term growth with the statement I have on the left, which is to become international market leader and to seek long-term growth.
As a question, how do you guys see the difference between PepsiCo's beverages and maybe its classic carbonated beverages as opposed to the non-carbonated beverages, and then its snack food categories? Do you see a difference in their places on the goals hierarchy? What do you
I would
guys
say
think?
so.
For instance, the Pepsi-Cola, is it the dominant factor in its industry? Maybe not. Maybe Coca-Cola is. So then favorable market position would be what Pepsi-Cola is seeking. But in the non-carbonated category, PepsiCo's the leader. But it's in a neck and neck race, right? It's hard to, maybe they're looking for long-term growth, but I think they're probably still looking for more of those innovations. On the other hand, when we get to Frito-Lay and snack food, where do you think they are on this hierarchy?
Yeah, it depends on what the snack food is, because it could be acceptable risk. If the professor doesn't like kombucha or kombucha, excuse me, then that might be a risk that they wrongfully assumed. As they spread that into the markets, they're going to be in that category still for that product line.
Well, your point is well taken, and that was a real sharp move. But I think in snack foods and what we consider to be the snack food industry, Frito-Lay is probably, for the very reason you mentioned, trying to figure out now that they've achieved leadership, what do you do for an encore? And I believe later on in the presentation you're going to have a suggestion, so I won't move to that. But the point simply is that when we look at different product categories that may be held by a single company, we may find ourselves in different places on the hierarchy.
Here we see those goals in a table and numbers. One of the outstanding numbers is that they have a goal in 5 years to reduce their leverage below 50%. So that'll put them in a better competitive position. We want to point out that this is again from Value Line. It's unlikely that the return on equity is going to be around 50%, and that in discussions we think perhaps this is before dividends, stock buyouts. Investors should not really expect a 50% return.
Not every year. That's a good point. Nevertheless, the Value Line analyst that we quoted here must have a very warm feeling toward PepsiCo. Also, it's remarkable. We're saying that by 2023, PepsiCo, that had $66 billion of sales last year, will have $80 billion 5 years later. That's 26% higher. And that's pretty good growth for a mature company like PepsiCo. So can we conclude with equity going up 41% on sales of 26% and leverage coming down from 66 to 45, that these are very ambitious, very, very smiling goals, right? These are good goals. We want goals to be attainable, but we want them to have stretch to make us, work hard for them. And so these are probably pretty good goals, with the possible exception, as Seth pointed out, 50% return on equity every damn year. Wow. That's really,
invest now.
That's really stroking.
If we were to tabulate these projections, this was what we would see. We would see sales climbing, return on invested capital climbing, return on equity steady, and then operating margin should also be somewhat steady.
I'm pushing the button, but it's not going. There it is. Whoa.
A little too far.
I only pushed it once. There we go.
And then with that increase in profit and revenues, they'll turn around, they'll pay off those debts, and then that'll bring down the leverage. Now, there could be an opportunity where they see a great buy and then they don't exactly bring that leverage down again. If rates are low and if there is a good purchase that was poorly managed, then they will certainly increase that leverage back up.
Excellent point. This thing is just sluggish. Sorry.
This shows our competitive position in the United States, India, Canada, China, and Russia. You can see for the most part, other than China, we remain number one in as far as snacks, but in beverages, only in India could I find where we're number one. And of course, in the USA, most of them were lacking behind Coca-Cola. Mm-hmm. So the intended market position, of course, is always going to be first. So our goal is to maintain the position where we're first or to gain the first position. But I did see that in China, they are starting to, or they just have bought one of their companies, B and Happy or something, B and Cherry, for $705 million, and it was their leading consumer-focused food and beverage company. So that's liable to put PepsiCo in the first place mark. We'll see, of course, because that just happened in February. So it's likely to change.
Okay. This is a great exhibit.
And I couldn't find that much up-to-date information as far as the global market, but this is from 2011, and it's just the soft drink. I tried to find beverages as a whole, but I couldn't find a different one, or I couldn't find one that were different from soft drinks to still beverages. But this shows you where Coca-Cola holds 42% of the soft drink market, and that, of course, was 2011. That has declined some now, and PepsiCo was at 30%.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine Coke's share is higher and Pepsi's is lower in the so-called soft drink market.
And this is the savory snack foods. And this was the only one I could find. I also didn't like this one because it just says others for over 50%, and it doesn't really tell you what they are. But PepsiCo is number one with Frito-Lay at over 25%. So. And that's from 2006, so that's likely to be a lot larger now.
Oh
but
my God! Yeah.
I wasn't able to find anything that was really that relevant. But I just wanted to show that their market position was.
Yeah, and what really matters here is that light blue category and the stuff that they throw in. You know, there, for instance, you see way down there, Link snacks. Meat snacks, that's not a bakery product, is it? So,
right.
You know, but the one thing even an exhibit like this points out is that Frito-Lay is the 10,000-pound gorilla in the salty and sweet snack industry by far. And so back to the goals hierarchy. If you're Frito-Lay and you've got that position, what exactly should you be thinking strategically? And there are two options. One, to expand your scope, you know, to be even larger, and you would do that through an acquisition, or recognize that there's a whole world out there in the among developed countries, or sorry, developing countries, where you can exploit that position and get even bigger, simply by doing what you've been doing even better, but doing it in different locations. And of the two options, if I were advising Frito-Lay today, which I did many years ago, it would be that second option that I would recommend.
PepsiCo is focused on, of course, increasing their revenue while reducing their leverage. They want to expand into new markets and achieve favorable market share, and they want to keep their market share or stay number one in the markets that they are. They're trying to pay off their long-term debt and grow. But I think it's also good to note that Pepsi-Cola has 22 $1 billion brands.
Yeah.
So it may look like Coke is beating them in this department or this, that, and the other. They've got 22 brands that bring in over $1 billion in annual sales. And that's just incredible.
It sure is.
In terms of corporate strategies, you know, there's pressures for local responsiveness. So to some degree internationally, they do a localization strategy where they'll take their main product and they'll differentiate it to flavors that country likes. Example, in India, they have marsala flavored products similar to Cheetos. With it being a global company, there's some duplicated processes within those regional divisions. So they do differentiation of products to match the tastes and preferences. At the business level, this is sort of a checklist of those different strategies that that they pursue. And we'll go over those in the following slides. They've been successful in horizontal integration, and that's through acquisitions to quickly enter the markets without having to develop it. They can just buy themselves right into the market and be there. On the right, we have a chart of most recent acquisitions from 2011 to today. I just want to point out a few to show where they've started up. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Hangzhou Foods, and they're in China. We have Pioneer Foods from South Africa. We have Mabel from Brazil, and those are baked goods as well. So that's for horizontal integration. Vertical integration. Earlier we mentioned that PepsiCo makes syrups and powders, and then there's bottling companies that are independent. Well, in 2010, PepsiCo acquired the two largest bottling companies, therefore vertically integrating that into their own value stream. And they're able to be more flexible in pricing and with the products by doing that. Diversification has been another strategy they pursued. Yes, they do related diversification. No, they've kind of unloaded on unrelated diversification. We see on the right there is an image of Pepsi products that you find in restaurants. So there's some diversification there. They've reached into the restaurant industry. Let's see here. And also, every time that they've acquired a product that is within the food industry, that's still related diversification. Quaker Foods, Frito-Lay, all those acquisitions still similar to their own knowledge base. Unrelated diversification was a failure. Well, not really a failure. It wasn't what they were pursuing.
Yes, it was. Yep.
So, yeah, okay, we'll go with that.
That was pretty dumb.
So they were not able to pair the brands together well. Wilson Sporting Goods, North American Van Lines are two examples that they've offloaded and been able to focus more on their own industries. As far as markets, they pursue market penetration, saturation, as well as market developments. Like I said before, they quickly enter markets through acquisitions. They focus on localization, differentiation to increase the demand in those markets. When you go to a grocery store, you look to the left, you see Frito-Lay, you look to the right, you see Pepsi. They control that. They have control over their buyers, and that's how they do that, and that's how they saturate the market. Market development, they do aggressive media advertising. They also do market research. I have an image there. There's an advertisement. How blatant can they be? What do you care about? That's what they ask there. So they find that out, and then they exploit it. The other two images show examples of acquisitions. We have Wimbledon from Russia, and we have Gatorade.
Oh, okay.
They also pursue strategies of product development, product proliferation, and some products they have experienced somewhat of a jump curve. With product development, they get new products either through acquisitions or R&D. They're responsive to customers with healthy options and other varieties that they produced. And they like to get into most of the categories that we consume. Breakfast foods, snack foods, energy drinks, sports drinks are, branches out from their original product lines.
Yeah.
Product proliferation is really something interesting. That's getting it out there, getting everyone enjoying and consuming it. So they do that a lot of times with their trial soda flavors. If you go to Taco Bell or some of the other restaurants they might have an exclusive flavor that starts there and then later becomes a mainstream bottled canned product. They're able to simply change formulations and try out something. If it fails, they stop it. If it's great, they exploit that again. We have examples of jumping curve products, Aquafina, because they had a great network and marketing power. They could just introduce their new bottle of water through those same channels and instantly have a successful product. And we might be seeing the same thing with the kombucha as a, you know, such a strong brand and company behind it, it's sure to jump the curve.
Bah. I think we have a little mistake here with product proliferation. So I need to make sure that we're clear about it. If we go to Ansoff's matrix, we have, you remember, market penetration, product development, which is developing a new product for the markets that we're already in, market development, where we take our existing products and move them into new markets or recently entered markets. And of course, that's where PepsiCo really needs to pay attention. And product proliferation, which are new products for new markets. So when PepsiCo introduced, when PepsiCo got into the fast food business, that might have been new products for new markets. When it got in, when it developed, when it got into North American van lines, that was sure a new product for a new market. Dumb as hell, but that was a new product for a new market. But when we're trying out a new soda flavor, that's not a new product for a new market. We're still making soda flavors and beverage products. So nothing has changed there. That's trial soda flavors, even in restaurants, were probably product developments. Or if it was Mountain Dew that we were taking into quick service restaurants, then that would have been market development. We're taking existing products to new markets. But in order for product proliferation to occur, we need to go into an entirely new market and probably a new industry with a new product. PepsiCo has not done a whole lot of that. And as we've pointed out, it's been difficult when they did. So I'm sorry to rain on your parade, but just in case people are watching this video, we need to make sure that they get right back to Ansoff's matrix. Okay.
So looking at, oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, rationale?
Yes, looking at the rationale for their strategic approach, much of this is taken straight from PepsiCo. They take pride in their commitment to doing business the right way. So this is referring to that corporate responsibility, corporate social responsibility that's so popular right now. Integrating purpose into their business strategy, which we'll talk about later in our implementation section. In 2019, they adopted a vision that encourages winning with purpose. Again, implementing that purpose into all of their strategy. The initiative conveys the belief that sustainability can be even greater contributor to PepsiCo's success in the marketplace. This was also really pushed, the sustainability concept, by Indra Nooyi when she was in office as CEO.
There they are.
Continue with Lisa.
Yes, the Ansoff's matrix. It's showing that from the existing to new products to the existing to new markets, and what their strategies would be for growth, and the market penetration, product development, product diversification, and market development, all around what PepsiCo is leading up to with their new market, new product developments, the existing markets, and the existing market segments.
Yeah, this is sort of a summary of PepsiCo's strategies, right? To grow.
Yes.
The purpose, Ansoff made this matrix to help us explain how a company has grown in the past or how it intends to grow in the future. And this is a nice summary of PepsiCo's growth strategies. Okay.
Ashley, if you continue.
Okay, the contribution to goals achievement, we see that PepsiCo's differentiation strategy to cater to local tastes and preferences will help PepsiCo gain market share and to break into some new markets. They've had successful mergers and acquisitions, which allow for a broader portfolio which will again lead to a greater market share for PepsiCo and afford them the ability to break into new markets. And they have a larger market share, which leads to increased profits for PepsiCo, which is the ultimate goal there. So. And the strategy summary is just that they pursue horizontal and vertical integration that Seth talked about. They benefit greatly from related diversification while foregoing unrelated diversification. They use acquisitions and mergers. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Well, I thought you were rushing me along. PepsiCo effectively
I
researches
pushed the button
markets.
when I shouldn't have. Sometimes I just have a nervous twitch.
PepsiCo effectively researches their markets and develops products and promotes its brands through media advertising.
Okay. Can I go now?
Yes, you may go.
Okay.
I'd like to pause here for just a second. So this is our last section of this presentation. And all of the background of PepsiCo, the strategic approaches of PepsiCo, all of that really leads into how they're implementing their goals, how they're implementing their strategy across the board. The first point that we'll look at is the research and development updates that PepsiCo has made recently. In 2007, they underwent the beginning of a transformation in the way their R&D group contributes to the overall goals of the company. Instead of looking at how to add R&D into the projects, they took this go-to global strategy, and it's grounded in deep consumer insight, unmatched product design, and new scientific and technological capabilities. This included their new structure, which came out of a decentralized organization and more towards global alignment, flexibility, and responsiveness. So by integrating R&D into every aspect of their production, they could really utilize everything that R&D had to offer. As part of this new structure, they hired a chief design officer, which is sort of a new role for a lot of corporations. Indra Nooyi hired this chief design officer to transfer design thinking into the entire business. So instead of just a marketing director saying what was going to go on the label of a soda bottle, there was this head of everything from beginning to end of showing what the design was supposed to be. So how do we crack open the can? How do we open this bag of chips? What does the front of the bag say? Does it appeal to the consumers that we're trying to appeal to? Mauro Porcini was this first chief design officer, and he gave the sector two main goals. The first was to develop meaningful, consistent customer experiences, and the second was innovation.
When I was at PepsiCo, I don't know whether it was this guy or someone else, but when we got into again, my mental block, but what did we call it with Pepsi, when we got the beverages and the snacks lined up on the aisles together, Pepsi, help me with it. You've done it before, Seth.
The
one Pepsi or
what is that? One Pepsi with a purpose. We have it on here somewhere.
well,
Cassandra had it, I think.
That's okay. Anyway, you know, we got the beverages and the snack foods coordinated in that program that I've got a mental block on. Anyway, one of the things that we wanted to do was, of course, let the customer know that they were in Pepsi country. And so a guy like this took a look at our packaging, and I don't know whether you've experienced this or not, but if you walk into a grocery store where PepsiCo product is Pepsi-Cola in these cardboard containers with 6 bottles or 6 cans or whatever, if you ever look at that aisle and think about what a Pepsi-Cola carton looks like, it's got wavy lines, right? One is red, one is white, and one is blue. And when you line up all these cartons on the grocery aisle, this was the time at a time when we were very nationalistic, America first, kind of like what Trump's trying to do now. But this was the America first sort of time in the maybe it was the 70s. So this designer designed our cartons and all our packaging so that when and this is why we wanted the Teamsters to have the ability to go in and arrange these cartons and the merchandise on the grocery shelves. And when that was done properly, a person would walk into that aisle, and what would they see with these red, white, and blue waves?
It's one big American flag.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so this guy, this designer, was the first to do this. And he designed our packaging so that when Mrs. Smith or Mr. Smith walked into the grocery aisle, there was this monster American flag. And we were very interested in loyalty, American loyalty, and American, feeling like we're
Patriotism.
This was right after the Vietnam War, you might remember. So there was just a lot of concern about feeling like we're part of one nation and all. And so this guy designed, he didn't design a package, he designed a grocery aisle. And when you walked into this aisle, here was this red, white, and blue, and you walked into an American flag. How could you not buy something there? Okay.
So throughout this presentation, we've had so many points on sustainability and corporate governance and how they're looking at those things. The Performance with Purpose initiative is a new goals implementation strategy that PepsiCo has taken on. Concluding in 2025, they have a list of goals. The three key pillars of these goals, you can read through the picture if you like, but the three key pillars of these goals is helping to improve health and well-being through the products it sells, protecting the planet, and empowering people around the world. Health and safety initiatives that PepsiCo has taken over the years. You can read the quote if you like. They're trying to create more nutritious products, reformulating things so that there's less trans fat, less salt, making things just a little bit healthier for people, and then giving people healthy options next to their traditional portfolio products. There's a commitment that they made to the Canadian Children's Food and Beverage Advertising Initiative. This was put forth by PepsiCo, and it included a list of all food, snacks, and beverages sold in Canada, and information on how PepsiCo is maintaining responsible advertising for health and wellness of children under age 12. So this includes things like putting commercials in between kids' TV shows, labeling things so that they especially appeal to children, just being responsible for where their products are ending up.
And again, this is more of this program that Mrs. Nguyen had to demonstrate that PepsiCo is a responsible company. By the way, the phrase I couldn't remember is the power of one.
Blah.
Here we have a list of the indulgent and nutritious products that PepsiCo is going into. So all the way to the left, we have these Starbucks Frappuccinos, which are super high calorie, full of milk, basically milk and a tiny amount of coffee. And then moving through, we have the Life Water in the middle, the Gatorade, all the way to the right where we've got Tropicana, the oat milk, which is coming more popular, and then some products in other countries. New skills and capabilities that are trending for companies like PepsiCo. We have a digital transformation period that we're going through right now. Everything is becoming digitalized. This digitalization is defined as the integration of digital technology into all areas of a business, changing how it operates and delivering value to stakeholders. So really embracing the digital transformation in terms of how they do mergers and acquisitions, how they can adopt digital models for their manufacturing processes, how they can expand their cloud adoption. Each of these is going to be really important for them to succeed in the future against other industry competitors.
Okay.
And then here we have some organization and structure and implementation. In the past, we had this square looking structure where you see the A, B, C, and D, where everything is very structured and easy to follow. We have these chains of command that you can go up. And where things are going is this interlinked matrix structure where everyone in each different compartment in each different business unit is talking to everyone else. To achieve success and competitive advantage in the evolving global climate, structures should be designed for speed, ability, and adaptability. So this can be achieved with these interlinked matrix structures better than the traditional boxy one. As part of the Performance with a Purpose and Sustainability initiative started by Ingenuity, a sustainability governance structure was created. This is laid out on the right.
And we'll switch to Lisa for remedial priorities.
Okay, remedial priorities are used to describe contamination and potential human health risks, and these are what PepsiCo is trying to reduce. And they definitely have certain goals that they have set out to do by reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 20% by the year 2030, and then the renewable electric and zero deforestation, and by 2025 reducing their plastic recycling. The external environmental conditions are divided into two: general environment and specific environments. And the general environment includes economical, social, cultural, technological, political, legal environment. And then the specific environments include the industry regulatory bodies, the advocacy groups, customers, competitors, and suppliers.
Okay.
And we'll switch back to Cassandra for implementation considerations.
So as we look at implementing all of these new goals and new strategies, especially around sustainability and healthier food options, PepsiCo, sorry.
Oh, did I do that to you again? I'm sorry.
PepsiCo leaders are going to need to evaluate the cannibalization of their capstone products. So right now they're pitching this as these indulgent versus nutritious products. But as the market continues to shift towards nutritious products rather than indulgent products, this could certainly begin to cannibalize the products that they've lived off of. These are their cash cows. And as the healthier new products come through and become more popular, it needs to be considered whether their old products will still be profitable. The future organization structure that is allowing for greater speed and flexibility, it also requires exceptional attention to accountability, communication, and interconnectedness.
Okay, Lisa.
Okay, PepsiCo has been very successful in balancing their strategies with their long and short-term objectives from inception to present.
Some implementation recommendations to be successful. As the soda market has been declining in the U.S., they've been offloading and marketing those products in some of the developing countries. So I have here that those products have been on the rise among poorer consumers in those countries. Some consider those to be vulnerable populations. And the same tactic was used by tobacco companies when the decline started in the U.S., that they started marketing outside the U.S. Because those health concerns aren't widely known or widely cared about in those areas. So to counter that, other countries have already implemented sugar taxes or other restrictions, going ahead and removing those products from their schools and trying to encourage people not to consume those because of the health risks. So the recommendation is that PepsiCo should implement a global emphasis on their healthy products, not just the more developed markets. And then that way they won't repeat history where later they have to develop those again in those outside of the US markets.
That's a good suggestion. And I think, okay.
This is a summary slide of the section we just discussed. Hits on most all the points we've discussed in the implementation section.
Okay. You guys really covered implementation well. I don't think I've seen a PepsiCo presentation before that got as deep into implementation as you guys have. So that makes this just a little bit more interesting. Let me see if I can get this thing now. Again, what I've got to do is get the system to cooperate with me, which is not always doable. Maybe I can. Doggone it, the thing that just isn't cooperating with me. Let's see, we haven't done any. I can't even get the toolbar. I would like to stop the recorder. This thing is that because this is in the way? Yeah, it is. Okay. All right. Oh, somebody's trying to get into the room. That's probably, oh, that's because somebody
Are
fell
you
out.
supposed to be in bed?
All right. Is anybody else in the meeting room besides the PepsiCo team?
No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay, good. They all gave up. So I'm going to turn off the recorder now so that